Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever noticed that when a man feels like you're always available, always giving, always chasing, something inside him changes, but not always in the way you want? Men are wired to value challenge, to respond to effort, and to respect someone who has boundaries. When you match his distance, when you stop pouring all your energy into him and instead create your own space, the shift is subtle but powerful. When you match a man's distance, something fascinating happens in his mind. The first and most immediate effect is curiosity. When he notices that you are not constantly available, not always responding instantly, not chasing after him, it triggers an instinctive response. Humans are naturally drawn to what is uncertain or slightly out of reach, and men are no exception. When you pull back and create space, he can no longer predict your actions, and that unpredictability stimulates his attention. He starts observing your patterns, trying to understand your behavior, and wondering what you are thinking or feeling. Curiosity is a powerful force because it engages his mind in a way that constant closeness never could. He begins to reflect on the time he spends with you, the effort he puts into communication, and the moments when he takes your presence for granted. The absence of constant validation makes him reconsider the value of your company. He may start to notice things he previously overlooked, like the little ways you contribute to the relationship, your personality traits, or the effort you put into maintaining the connection. This newfound awareness often leads him to reassess how much he cares and how important you are in his life. The curiosity that emerges is not just a passing thought, it becomes a driving force that influences his decisions and behaviors. When your attention is no longer guaranteed, he has to earn it, and that challenge naturally piques his interest. Men respond to effort and the sense that something worthwhile is not freely given. By creating space, you shift the dynamic from one of complacency to one of engagement. He starts thinking about what he can do to regain closeness, how he can impress you, or how he can deepen the connection. This mental engagement is a direct result of your strategic distance and is a subtle but powerful way to capture his focus. The process also sparks emotional engagement because curiosity is intertwined with desire. As he wonders about your thoughts, your activities, and your feelings, he becomes more emotionally invested. This investment can manifest as increased attentiveness, more thoughtful communication, or even an internal dialogue where he evaluates his own intentions and feelings toward you. The more he wonders and reflects, the more he mentally prioritizes you, even when you are not physically present. This heightened awareness and mental presence strengthen the bond in ways that constant closeness rarely achieves, making curiosity a key driver in shaping his attention, respect, and desire toward you. Respect and desire are two of the strongest forces that drive a man's thoughts and actions, and they are deeply influenced by the way you manage your presence in his life. When you maintain your boundaries and match his distance, you create a dynamic where he cannot take you for granted. Constant availability often leads to familiarity, which can unintentionally reduce attraction because he begins to assume your attention and care will always be there. When you pull back, when you refuse to always close the gap or respond instantly, he begins to recognize that your presence is valuable and not something that should be treated lightly. This recognition sparks respect because he sees that you are intentional, self-aware, and unwilling to compromise your standards for convenience. Respect grows when he realizes that you are not easily influenced by his moods or demands. A man notices when a woman knows her worth, protects her time, and refuses to sacrifice her priorities simply to be closer to him. This creates an internal shift where he starts evaluating his own actions. Am I being worthy of her attention? Am I investing enough in this relationship? He becomes more conscious of his behavior because he no longer assumes that closeness is automatic. The awareness that he has to earn your attention and affection triggers a deeper level of admiration. Desire is naturally tied to respect. Men are drawn to those they admire and feel challenged by in a respectful, balanced way. When boundaries are clear, desire intensifies because the connection feels less predictable and more meaningful. He begins to appreciate the moments he does have with you more deeply, savoring conversations, time together, and even small gestures of intimacy. Your ability to maintain independence while still engaging with him strategically reinforces his perception that you are both confident and valuable. This perception makes him mentally prioritize you, thinking more about your needs, your moods, and your reactions because they are not constantly accessible. Maintaining boundaries also allows a man to step into his own responsibility. He realizes that if he wants closeness, he must act intentionally, put in effort, and show genuine care. This not only increases desire, but also cultivates respect for the way you carry yourself. When a man senses that you are not chasing or compromising, he starts valuing the connection on a deeper level. He begins to notice patterns in his own behavior, questioning whether he is giving enough and reflecting on the qualities that make you unique and important. The interplay of distance, boundaries, and measured engagement shapes a mental landscape where respect and desire coexist, guiding his thoughts toward valuing and investing in you. When you create a sense of absence or space in a relationship, it immediately draws a man's attention to your value and worth. Human nature is such that we often overlook what is constantly present, assuming it will always be available. Men are no different. When you step back, reduce constant communication, or stop making yourself overly accessible, he begins to realize that your presence is not something to be taken for granted. That subtle shift in dynamics forces him to notice the little things he may have ignored before, the effort you put into the relationship, the kindness in your gestures, the consistency of your character. This recognition is the first step in valuing what you bring into his life, because absence highlights significance. As he experiences this distance, he starts to evaluate the time he spends with you and the moments he may have overlooked. He becomes more aware of your unique qualities, your boundaries, and the consistency with which you maintain them. He notices the energy you invest, the emotional support you provide, and the depth of your personality that he may have assumed was always there for him to take freely. This realization triggers a mental process where he begins to attach greater importance to your presence, seeing it as a privilege rather than a given. By creating space, you are not withdrawing affection or care, but rather allowing him to see your value through the lens of reflection and consideration. The perception of worth also intensifies desire. When he understands that your attention is meaningful and not automatically granted, he naturally wants to earn it. Every interaction becomes more intentional because he realizes that genuine connection requires effort. This encourages him to think about his actions, words, and choices in a way he may not have previously. He starts to prioritize your happiness, your needs, and the quality of the moments you share together. Your absence does not create distance and love. Instead, it deepens his awareness and makes every shared experience more appreciated. This process of noticing your value often leads to increased respect. He begins to understand that you are not someone who compromises her self-worth or lowers her standards for the sake of attention. That respect, combined with the recognition of your importance, fuels both admiration and desire. As he continues to reflect, he may also evaluate how his own behavior aligns with the level of care and respect you deserve. The space you create acts as a mirror, allowing him to see both your worth and his own level of investment. By strategically stepping back, you guide him to a place where he cannot ignore your significance, where he begins to truly appreciate the person you are and the presence you bring into his life. When you match a man's distance, it often sparks a deeper level of reflection on his feelings and commitment. Men, like everyone else, tend to take the easiest path when affection and attention are freely available. When you stop being constant, accessible, he is forced to pause and consider what your absence means. He begins to analyze his own emotions, asking himself questions he may have ignored before. How much do I truly care? Am I investing enough? Do I want this relationship to grow, or am I taking it for granted? That mental reflection is triggered because your measured distance disrupts the automatic pattern of connection he may have relied on, making him more conscious of the choices he is making. This reflection often leads to increased self-awareness. He starts to notice the ways he interacts with you, the effort he puts into communication, and the level of emotional engagement he demonstrates. He may recognize moments where he has been distant, inattentive, or complacent and contrast them with the effort you consistently show. By creating this space, you provide him with an opportunity to evaluate not only his feelings, but also his actions. The realization that closeness is not guaranteed pushes him to think about what he is willing to do to maintain and strengthen the connection. As he contemplates his own behavior, he also begins to examine the depth of his emotional investment. He questions whether he is ready to commit fully, whether he values the relationship enough to prioritize it, and whether he is willing to step up in ways that match your standards. This introspection can lead to a stronger sense of accountability because he understands that your boundaries are not arbitrary. They reflect our self-respect and expectations. When a man recognizes that effort is required to maintain closeness, he begins to consider his future intentions and what he truly wants from the relationship. The process also intensifies desire, as reflection makes him more emotionally engaged. Thinking about your absence, about the moments he misses, and about the ways he has taken you for granted triggers a mental pull towards you. Your distance encourages him to internalize the value of the connection and to weigh the consequences of neglecting it. The combination of emotional reflection and desire motivates him to act intentionally, to communicate more thoughtfully, and to invest in ways that align with the seriousness of the relationship. Through this careful matching of distance, a man's mind begins to navigate both his feelings and his responsibilities, shaping a deeper awareness of commitment and the importance of honoring the bond you share. Creating strategic space in a relationship shifts the dynamic in a way that is subtle but profoundly impactful. When you step back and stop constantly closing the gap, you are no longer operating from a place of chasing or overinvesting. Instead, you show quiet strength, independence, and self-respect, which changes how he perceives the connection. He begins to notice that your attention is not guaranteed, and that realization alone forces him to pay closer attention to his own behavior and the way he values you. This shift does not require company, confrontation, arguments, or manipulation. It happens naturally because distance creates mental space for reflection. By giving him room, you allow him to experience the relationship from a different perspective. He is no longer conditioned to take your presence for granted, and the absence makes him consider the importance of your attention. He starts thinking about the ways he interacts with you, the effort he puts in, and the emotional energy he contributes. This mental engagement is heightened because he senses that he cannot rely on automatic closeness. Every interaction, every message, and every moment of attention becomes more meaningful because it is not assumed. This dynamic encourages him to step up, to act intentionally, and to show genuine interest. A lack of constant accessibility also triggers desire. Humans are naturally drawn to things that are valuable and require effort to attain, and men are no different. When you match his distance, you create an environment where he must engage thoughtfully, reflect on his feelings, and prioritize the connection if he wants to maintain it. This process makes him more present mentally, even when he is not physically interacting with you. He starts to consider the potential loss of your presence and begins to internalize the significance of what he might miss if he fails to act consciously. This dynamic also fosters respect because he sees that you have standards, boundaries, and a sense of self-worth that is non-negotiable. Respect grows naturally when someone recognizes that your attention and care are not easily earned but are given to those who are willing to invest sincerely. He becomes more attuned to your needs and more conscious of his role in the relationship. By matching his distance, you subtly guide him toward greater awareness of both his feelings and his responsibilities. This mental and emotional shift strengthens the bond without overt pressure or confrontation, allowing the relationship to evolve in a more balanced and intentional way.